welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and this is April 13th, 2016, episode 133. So you can see all our episodes at walkinthepark.tv, my video blog. Just go there and search for whatever you like, and lots of different topics and shows. We're going to, last episode we were at Taughannock Falls State Park and looking at changes in Taughannock Falls in many different perspectives, from during the seasons, during the time of day, during different kinds of weather, and over geologic time, and also during history. We're going to continue that discussion, particularly looking at the history of rock falls at Taughannock Falls. So we'll go up here in the air with Bill Hecht, local photographer who likes to take pictures from the air, as well as does a lot of historical photographs. He scans and makes them available to everybody. He's very generous. Looking down at Taughannock Falls State Park, there is the gorge running from the lower left, that'd be the west, over towards Cayuga Lake. And there's the point out there. And the main, just right of center, is the main gorge. And sort of where that ends is where Taughannock Falls itself is. We're going to swing around in the airplane from the other direction, looking down at the gorge. This is just the upper end of the gorge before the falls. Just right of center is a gray patch. That is the overlook parking area, which actually, if I get a chance later, I'll tell you about what's going on there. A lot of changes. But the gorge swings around to the left, and then there's the big waterfall that we all know and love. And now looking down on it again, come around, there's the parking lot for the overlook in the lower right. And then zooming in, there is the waterfall. Not a lot of water on it in this picture, taken some summer afternoon. And or summer morning, or it looks like late morning. Anyway, so the falls have changed a lot over time, and even visibly during one lifetime. And I've been looking at the falls for a long time because I used to work at Taughannock Falls State Park from 1979 to 2003. I was in charge of environmental education for the Finger Lakes State Parks at the regional headquarters on the Taughannock Park Road that goes up to the overlook. So we might want to I'll share some of my observations over the time that I was there, but we're going to look at a larger scale here. So one thing about Taughannock Falls, it's kind of unique around here, is it's a really high waterfall. I mean, it's one big drop. It's actually taller than Niagara Falls, a little bit taller than Niagara Falls. Obviously, Niagara Falls has a lot more water coming over it. You know, Taughannock Falls is maybe 25, 30 feet wide at its widest, not in this picture. Niagara Falls and the Horseshoe Falls is like half a mile wide. 215 feet high. Niagara at its tallest is around 200, 205 in the Horseshoe Falls, and about 180 or so in American Falls. So why do we have this one single big drop? If you look at the waterfall, at the cliff really, behind the waterfall, you can see that things change about halfway up the cliff. Well, let's see how a geologist or earth science teacher might look at that. There's actually, we went over this in the last episode, so I won't dwell on it a lot, but there are like 4 different formations that are visible at the falls. Basically just 3, the Geneseo Formation, the Sherburne Formation, and the Ithaca Formation. And what's responsible for the falls are the middle 2, the Sherburne Formation and the Geneseo Formation. The Sherburne Formation is made mostly of sandstone. I don't know if you can read that underneath the name there. And the Geneseo Formation is made mostly of shale. The sandstone or siltstone, very fine-grained sand. When it formed in the ancient sea hundreds of millions of years ago, it made a pretty relatively tough rock, not super tough, but certainly tougher than shale, which is made up mostly of clay. And when there's these 2 very thick layers of sandstone and shale. Most of our gorges around here, you have an alternation of sandstone and shale, and sometimes limestone, over a short period of height, and over a short distance of height, I should say. And when you get a gorge cut in them, you get kind of a staircase waterfall, because the sandstone forms the cap of a waterfall usually, and the shale, which erodes out more quickly, undermines that cap. And in this case, we just have 2 major layers, so we get one drop in the waterfall. So here you can see below, the frost in the wintertime is eroding away at the shale, and that takes away the support that the sandstone Sherburne Formation has from above. The support above of the sandstone above is eroded away as the shale, as the Geneseo Shale crumbles away. And then you can see on the right there where rock has fallen away and it's lost its support. So we're looking up in various places. You can see all these places, these sort of like arches in the Sherburne Formation where the shale below has just eroded away. And so the sandstone, which is a more competent rock, I guess you might say, holds together, and then it breaks off in chunks, unlike shale, which breaks in little fragments usually. So we're going to take a look at, and I showed this last week too, but it's fun to go over it again. We're going to take a look at the one of the biggest rock falls that anybody's ever photographed, certainly the biggest I've ever seen a photograph of. So this was back on November 4th, 2010, and there was a guy named Arthur Lovell who was, I think he had been visiting his daughter here at Cornell. He was from Oxford, England, actually, and he happened to go to the overlook at the falls, and he was taking pictures, and this is what it looked like. And then all of a sudden, crash, this enormous piece of rock came roaring down from the left side of the falls and just exploded at the bottom of the falls. Now, I've seen things not quite this dramatic, but I've seen a lot of rock falls around the falls, and we'll get into that a little bit in a few minutes. So here we're zooming in, another one of Arthur's pictures here, zooming in. This is the before view, if you can, I don't know if you can see that on your TV, the label, but this is before the rock fall, looking at the cliff where the principal piece of rock fell, and then this is the about a 54-foot span of rock dropped out. So this is after the rock fall, this is before. So to compare them, yeah. So that's pretty dramatic. Go up here again, you can actually see it in these pictures. You look to the left of the waterfall, and then you see it drops out. Very dramatic. Kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. So, and of course, all that stuff falls down below, and it's wipes out anything that's down there. That's why you don't see much vegetation around the falls, because there's constant rock falls around there as the sandstone gets undermined. At the end of the trail to the falls, there's this observation area that has banked up around it. It has berms of rock and soil and stone walls and so forth to keep the falling rocks from getting into that area. And there are some interpretive signs that actually, when I worked at the parks, I put these together. And one of the signs tells about the rock falls. It shows a picture of a rock fall, not that one, but another one, and explains why you should not go beyond this observation area. And there's also another sign, which I don't have the picture of it here, but it's just a sign, just says end of trail, hazards ahead, whatever, exactly what the wording is. But a lot of people like to walk over towards the falls. They think that's, well, I'm sure it's an exciting thing to do. You can get a close-up view of it. But if you look on the right there, you'll see that, again, there's very little vegetation except stuff that's grown temporarily. There's no trees, and there's just piles of rock. And that comes down without warning. So we're going to go up in the air again in Bill Heck's picture and look straight down on this this area. And you can see at the very bottom, you can see the end of the trail in the observation area, and then up along the right-hand side of the pool at the base of the falls. That's where people tend to walk, even though there's signs there clearly explaining what the hazard is. And I'm going to read to you a little bit from the Ithaca Journal. This was in August 2005. What began as a leisurely hike down the Taughannock Falls Trail Monday afternoon turned into a tragedy for a family of 4 as a New Jersey woman died following a rock slide on the northwest side of the falls. So that would be on the right-hand side of the falls. Deborah Rowan, 51, of Westmont, New Jersey, was flown by helicopter to Arnott Ogden Medical Center in Elmira, where she was pronounced dead after rescue workers removed her from the gorge floor. Park police said Rowan had been on the gorge floor off the trail with her husband and their 14-year-old daughter and 11-year-old son. Emergency workers were dispatched to the gorge at 12:48 p.m. and about 20 Trumansburg firefighters arrived there about 12:57. Okay. Quote, As far as we know, there was some kind of rock slide at the falls, said Trumansburg Fire Chief Jason Fulton. Fulton reported no injuries to emergency workers, but some loose rock fell during the rescue operation. So it's dangerous for the rescuers, too, to have to go into these areas if you go off trail and get into trouble from rock falls or ice or what have you. This is the 30th anniversary last month of the death of one of a park policeman who was trying to rescue a Cornell student stuck on ice in Buttermilk Gorge, and he slipped and went in and died. Okay, let's see. Witnesses told the Journal that falling rocks struck at least one person, that there was dust everywhere. Quote, every year we send out scalers, and we send them to all of the gorge parks, said Major Richard Waffle, commanding officer of the Park Police for the Finger Lakes region. Waffle was referring to New York State Parks workers who scale down gorge walls to knock down loose rock along the trails before the season begins. And so that's going on right now in our gorges, not at Taughannock so much because the gorge is so wide, but at places like Buttermilk Falls, Robert Treman, Watkins Glen, Fillmore Glen, and also Stony Brook State Park, which is one of the Finger Lakes State Parks. So it was a terrible day. Let's see what else I can tell you here. That area was not, the area that they were in was not scaled because they weren't supposed to be there. They don't scale areas that people don't go into, but they scale areas above trails. So now that was a really dry season. I remember that summer, and remember some other summers like that in August usually. There's very little water coming over the falls, and the rock dries out and shrinks and is liable to give way. And of course, when we have a lot of rain, it can be a problem. And also after the winter, when there's been a lot of freezing and thawing. Arthur Bloom, retired Cornell University geology professor, whom I know, said the area has a, quote, nasty history of rock falls. The dry weather probably caused the rocks to crack and shrink, Bloom said. More likely it happens during rain, or especially in the winter, when ice builds up in the cracks, and that can push out the rocks. Yeah, so almost any rock will, but our local shales there have a lot more openings, and they tend to shrink and break up, he said. It can be more or less rapid. It can be more or less rapid extremes are very dangerous to people. It's very dangerous rock to be climbing around on. So don't go rock climbing on this rock. It is very unstable. Even the best rock climbers say no. In fact, the best rock climbers know very well not to go climbing on this rock. They go places that have really solid stuff. So let's take a look at Taughannock Falls. We're going to actually look at the most famous rock fall that the gorge. Let me check my time. What do we got time? Most famous rock fall that has happened at Taughannock Falls, at least in historic times. Let's take a look at the falls. This is from the Overlook, but back in the 1800s, sometime between the Civil War and the turn of the 20th century, and there was a hotel there, and there's all kinds of gazebos and little structures to view the falls. Look at that. Can you see the falls to the left of this little gazebo, and then the falls to the right of that little cabin there? And everybody was staying at this hotel. You could get there by steamboat from Ithaca, or you could take a train, which now the train trestle is still upstream from the falls, is still there. It's the northern end of the Black Diamond Trail, which was the name of Black Diamond, was the last train to run on that route. But now it's a bike hike trail that's still in its finishing stages. So this is one of the most famous pictures of the falls from that overlook. A lot of people use this picture. I don't know if you can quite see the lip of the falls there, but let's go to the other side of the gorge, and there's an overlook there. It's no longer many viewpoints on that side, but there was this structure, may have been called Point Lookout. There was a place called Point Lookout, and I think this was it. And there were people that stayed at a hotel over there called the Cataract House. The one on the north rim was the Taughannock House, and one on the south rim was the Cataract House. And you could actually get access to the top of the falls, which is off limits now for safety reasons. But look at that little viewing structure up to the right there, and then there's a railing just to the right of center, just at the lip of the falls. And you could actually go out there. You see, this is a colorized photograph from the time, and maybe you can see just to the left of upper center there, there's a guy standing there who walked over there. We'll see a little bit more of him in a minute or so. Or, of course, you could go down to the bottom and walk up the falls. But look at the lip of the falls in all of these pictures. The lip of the falls is projecting out. And down below, it's projecting out in this point. Whereas these days, it's not doing that. It's sort of inverted in. So all these views from back then. So the falls looked really different in the 1890s or so. So I'm going to see if I can find we have a little video here coming up. I'm going to make sure I get the right place to look at it. Well, we'll get to it. Yeah, so there's the lip of the falls. Yeah, here we go. There's the lip of the falls. There's it's the same picture. It's actually not colorized. That same guy's in it. So let's see what happened and when it happened to change. And it changed to look something like that all at once. So I have another little video. Well, I'm going to have a little video, rather, to show you. I'll have another one later. And let's go to that. But getting back to the last century, the lip of the Great Falls was different then from its appearance today, as you may have noticed in the pictures. Instead of being indented as it is now, the lip projected out as a point. In 1895, owner R.V. Jones had planned to seal a gap that had been forming between the overhanging slab of rock and the rest of the cliff. All the material had been ordered and the masons were ready to start when heavy rains came and prevented them from working. Then winter came, and they had to wait longer. They waited too long. The crash of the falling rock from the top of the falls was heard by farmers all around, and the appearance of Taughannock Falls was changed for the approaching new century. So, that was actually from an earlier episode of Walk in the Park that I did 2 years ago, called 4 Centuries at Taughannock Falls. It actually came from a slideshow I made, about 30 years ago, about the history of Taughannock Falls. So you can see that on my website. You can go to walkinthepark.tv. Where is that again? Here. You can go there and just hunt for that. Just hunt for Taughannock Falls, 4 Centuries at Taughannock Falls, anything like that, and you'll be able to find it. And that's a fun program. So the lip of the falls changed and has been inverted ever since. It was sticking out as a point, and now afterwards it's been inverted. It's changed some since these pictures were taken nearly 100 years ago, maybe 90 years ago or so. These pictures were taken. So, and that would have been, I don't know, maybe 20 years after the rockfall. Okay, so what is that all about? Well, let's take a look here. Let's see. It projects out at a point. Oh, look at this guy here. Huh? It makes everybody nervous. It should. Don't do this, and they will give you a hefty fine if you do. But so let's take a look. There's something about the rocks themselves and the geology that make the falls change in that way, such that it once pointed out and now it's inverted. If you fly up above the falls, which you can't really do, this was a drone shot that I took off of somebody's video, and you notice the lip of the falls is a V, and you can see a lot of cracks in the rocks there. And then I'm going to zoom out and look at the walls on either side. They sort of meet almost at right angles. Everything meets at right angles. And looking up in the air here now again on Bill Heck's photograph, the walls of the gorge actually meet in the falls at almost a right angle. Now this phenomenon is called jointing in the rocks, where there are fractures. Here's again, we're at Robert Treman State Park. On the left you can see again one of these arches that forms in sandstone, and then the shale below is eroded away, and then the sandstone loses its support and the rock drops out and revealing a flat wall. And you look to the right of that and you can see there's a pinnacle there with cracks in it, and that pinnacle is separated by every few feet there is a vertical fracture called a joint, and they run in 2 different directions. One of them runs one way, like you can see into the cliff here, but there's another set that runs almost at 90 degrees to it, these fractures in the rocks. And when the rocks fall away, they leave these flat walls and corners. And that's pretty cool. So they also these joints become roots for erosion of our gorges. Many of our gorges are controlled by these joints. This is in Upper Tremont again, what they call the master joint, joint slot entrance to the gorge there, which ends in this pool. There's a couple of places where waterfalls once polished out holes, but the rock takes a left-hand turn, and on the left-hand side of center, you can see there's some of these vertical joints, some of these straight joints, and they define the way the rock erodes. At least the rock that is a little tougher, not so much the weak shale, doesn't maintain these joints so well, but they don't manifest there. But these joints were caused by pressures in the earth a long time ago, maybe 150, 200 million years ago or more, with the compression of mountain building forces, and it could have been water in the rocks or natural gas in the rocks that compressed and caused these fractures to form. So this is actually a Taughannock here. You're looking up at a cliff along the way that's all defined. It's the sandstone again above the shale that's been undermined, and then these blocks of sandstone fall out along these joints. And if you look at the gorge itself, you'll see that the gorge runs in sort of a zigzag pattern, and that is controlled by the joints. And in fact, the entire lake, Cayuga Lake, runs in a pattern that is controlled by these joints that are all through the rocks of central New York and many other places on the earth. So let's go up in the air again. In the bottom of the picture here, as the gorge goes along, it's actually running parallel to one set of joints. And then the gorge, for some reason, takes a little turn, a little hook to the left, up by the falls, which is where that big wall ends there. Up by the falls, it takes a hook to the left. And let's zoom in again, looking at that hook. And what the effect is that where up here, the gorge, most of the gorge is running parallel to the joint, it hooks to the left, it goes 45 degrees into the junction of joints, such that the gorge walls meet there, and that corner is where the falls are, and the rocks fall away on either side of that junction progressively over time, and that's what has happened. So now things have changed a bit since the old days. And the old days, I mean, let's see if I've got a picture of that. Let's go back to some of these pictures. Yeah, maybe you can see the top of the falls. It's up near the top of the picture here. You may not see it on your TV set so well, but in any case, it's a pretty much well-defined V that's controlled by those joints. But things don't stay just that way. If you look at this picture, you can see that rock has fallen away beneath that inverted V, and in fact on the right-hand side it's forming another smaller inverted V, and sort of making a W. So we used to have a V at the top of the falls. Formerly we had a projecting corner of a square, I guess, sticking out, and then it all tipped off in sort of a diamond-shaped piece of rock, and and then now we have some more erosion. So the rock has been falling away here. Get back down to where we were. Okay. Now if you look at this picture here, you can see that rock has fallen away underneath that V and so forth. So we're going to have at some point probably another big rock fall underneath what you see here, and it will look different again. I'm not sure. I don't know what'll happen, actually. We'll have to wait and see. But basically this has been the 20th century. Well, this is taken early 21st century, but changes with the centuries. So if I have any other photos here. Okay. Yeah, let me get back up here. Get ahead of myself here a little bit. All right, so here's what the falls looked like today. Oh yeah, here's another picture. This is looking back, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago, maybe not quite. You can see how much rock is under today's overlook. And then this was back, probably in the 1980s. I took that picture. Then this picture, compare them, how much rock is under the left-hand side of the falls and how much is gone. Okay, good. Again, you can see it really well here because there's very little water on the falls, and compared with what it was like back maybe the 1920s. And this is what it's like on Easter Day here, and then from down below. So, so we're going to take a really brief video here from a little series I have called Glimpse of Nature, and we'll look at that. Okay. Last May, this group of people gathered at the overlook to the falls, and they began what is another big set of changes at Taughannock Falls, but not geologic changes, but changes in accommodation of visitors. Many of them are brass from state parks in Albany, and then local officials, and the one guy without a hat there on the left, in that line of people with hats, there's one guy without a hat. That's Fred Bond, who's the regional director of the Finger Lake State Parks. I don't know why he didn't have his hat on. But anyway, this is the overlook, but just up from the overlook, you're probably familiar with that very unappealing parking lot. It's all changing. If you have been up there, you've seen all this construction going on. Here's a garden here that's going to have, I guess, a lot of different pollination plants in there for pollinators. They have an interpretive sign for it. But in the back there is a new visitor information center. We'll look at it from, this is the side from near the overlook. And on this end of it, there will be an information desk in there. And you can find out all kinds of information about tourism in the area, the parks, and some of the interpretive geologic information. And then the other end will be a new comfort station, new restrooms, and some interpretive signs. And then the overlook itself has been nicely paved with stone, and yet the overlook is, the actual old stone historic overlook is unchanged because it ain't broke, so they ain't going to fix it. It's really nice. So that's what we have to look forward to. It's going to open up soon, and this season we'll be able to enjoy that. So that's all I've got for today. Thanks for joining me and taking a look at the great rockfall at Taughannock Falls. And we'll see you again sometime soon. Thanks for